The attic was dark and dusty, cobwebs hung from every corner, the air was thick with the smell of decay. It was a place forgotten by time. Sarah and her friends David, Emily and Ben were exploring Sarah's grandmother's old house. They stumbled upon a locked wooden chest tucked away in the attic's darkest corner. The chest was heavy, its wood warped and cracked with age. Its lock was rusty, as if untouched for decades. Curiosity gnawed at them. What secrets did this old chest hold? With much effort, David managed to pry it open. Inside, nestled amongst moth-eaten clothes and old photographs, they found a single object, a dusty VHS tape. Its label, barely legible, read, "Hill House Investigation." Intrigued, they took the tape downstairs. They decided to watch it, hoping to uncover the secrets of Sarah's grandmother's past. They huddled together in the dimly lit living room, a sense of anticipation hanging heavy in the air. The tape whirred to life, revealing grainy footage of a group of people standing before a large, ominous-looking house. This was it, Hill House. The label on the tape was true. Sarah's grandmother had been involved in some sort of investigation here, but what had happened? The friends watched, captivated as the footage began to unfold, revealing a chilling story that would forever change their lives. The footage flickered, showing the investigators entering Hill House. The house was dark, its windows boarded shut. Dust covered every surface. The air hung heavy with an unsettling silence. The investigators, equipped with cameras and recording equipment, ventured deeper into the house. Their voices echoed through the empty halls, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence that had greeted them. As they explored, Sarah, David, Emily and Ben felt a growing unease. The footage had a strange quality to it, a subtle distortion that made it seem almost unreal. The light from the investigators' flashlights seemed to dance and shift, casting long, eerie shadows that stretched and contorted along the walls. Strange noises began to emerge from the house's depths. A low hum vibrated through the floorboards. Doors creaked open and slammed shut seemingly on their own. The investigators, though initially skeptical, began to show signs of fear. Their faces grew pale and their voices trembled. The friends watching felt a chill run down their spines. It was as if the terror felt by the people on the tape was seeping out into the room, infecting them with its dread. Sarah found herself holding her breath, her heart pounding against her ribs. She looked at her friends. Their faces were etched with a mixture of fascination and fear. They were all being drawn into the story unfolding before them, becoming unwilling participants in the haunting of Hill House. The investigators decided to hold a séance in the house's old dining room. They hoped to communicate with the spirits they believed were haunting the place. Sarah, David, Emily and Ben watched as the investigators set up candles and sat around a large ornate table. The flickering candlelight cast grotesque shadows on the walls, turning the investigators' faces into masks of fear. The air grew thick with tension. The investigators began chanting, their voices low and guttural. They called out to the spirits, inviting them to make contact. A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging the investigators into darkness. A wave of goosebumps erupted on Sarah's arms. She felt a sudden chill. Despite the warmth of the summer night, the investigators' voices grew frantic. They gasped for breath, their words lost in the sudden darkness. On the tape, the camera shook violently, capturing only fragments of the chaos that ensued. The friends strained their eyes, trying to make out what was happening in the darkness. Then a new sound cut through the chaos. A whisper, soft and chilling, seemed to emanate from the tape itself. It was a voice filled with sorrow and rage, a voice that spoke of unspeakable horrors. The friends froze, their blood turning to ice. The whisper lingered in the air even after the footage cut to static. It was as if the voice had found a way out of the tape, crossing the barrier between the recorded past and the present, invading their reality. The friends were shaken. The séance footage had left them with a deep sense of unease. The whisper, the sudden darkness, the palpable terror of the investigators. It was all too real, too close for comfort. They decided to take a break, needing time to process what they had witnessed. As they stepped out into the warm summer night, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The old house seemed to loom over them, its dark windows like empty eyes. The whispers from the tape echoed in their minds, haunting their thoughts. They tried to distract themselves, talking about anything but the tape, but their efforts felt hollow. The events recorded on the VHS had wormed their way into their minds, leaving behind a residue of fear and foreboding. Back inside, they decided to continue watching the tape. Despite their fear, they were drawn to the story, compelled to uncover its secrets. They felt a strange responsibility to the people on the tape, a need to understand their fate. As they resumed watching, they noticed that the footage had taken on a more sinister quality. The colors seemed washed out, the shadows deeper. The investigators' faces were etched with exhaustion and terror. They moved through the house as if pursued by something unseen, their eyes constantly darting around, searching for the source of the haunting whispers that plagued their every step. Section 5. The Séance. The investigators gathered in a darkened room, their faces illuminated by a single flickering candle. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and dread. They sat in a circle, their hands resting on a Ouija board, their fingers trembling with fear. Sarah, David, Emily, and Ben watched with bated breath, their hearts pounding in unison with the rhythmic tapping of the planchette as it moved across the board. The investigators asked questions, their voices hushed, their eyes wide with a mixture of hope and terror. The planchette spelled out cryptic messages, each word sending shivers down the spines of the friends watching from the safety of their living room. The tape crackled, the image distorting momentarily, as if struggling to contain the raw power of the events unfolding before the camera. Suddenly, a gust of wind slammed the door shut, plunging the room into darkness. Panicked screams erupted from the investigators as the candle was extinguished, leaving them engulfed in an impenetrable blackness. The friends gasped, their bodies tensing, as if they too were trapped in that darkened room. The camera shook violently, capturing only snippets of the chaos, flailing limbs, overturned furniture, the chilling sound of unseen forces colliding with the terrified investigators. A blood-curdling shriek pierced the darkness, a sound so raw and filled with terror that it sent a wave of goosebumps across Sarah's skin. Then, silence. The camera lens, now obscured by a dark viscous substance, offered only a glimpse of the horror that had unfolded in that room. Section 6. Terror Unleashed. The friends stared at the blank screen, their minds struggling to comprehend the events they had just witnessed. The terror that had gripped the investigators was palpable, reaching out from the screen to touch them with its icy fingers. Sarah felt a knot of dread twisting in her stomach. This was no ordinary haunted house story. Something truly sinister had transpired within the walls of Hill House. The tape resumed, revealing the investigators in a state of disarray. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with a haunting mixture of fear and bewilderment. The camera panned across the room, showcasing the aftermath of the chaotic séance: overturned furniture, shattered glass, and strange symbols scrawled across the walls in what appeared to be blood. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, their silence speaking volumes about the horror that had gripped them. The investigators, their voices trembling, attempted to piece together what had happened. Their accounts were fragmented, riddled with gaps in memory and incoherent ramblings. It was as if the darkness had not only extinguished the light, but had also stolen pieces of their minds, leaving them with only fragments of the horrifying truth. Emily, her voice barely above a whisper, pointed out the eerie similarity between the symbols on the wall and the ones she had seen in an old book about ancient rituals and demonic invocations. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Could it be that the investigators had unwittingly unleashed something truly evil during their ill-fated séance? Driven by a morbid curiosity and a growing sense of dread, the friends continued watching the tape. The investigators, their nerves frayed and their spirits broken, decided to leave Hill House. But as they made their way towards the exit, they stumbled upon a gruesome discovery. In the main hallway, sprawled across the floor, lay the body of one of their own. The friends gasped, their eyes widening in horror. The image on the screen was blurred, as if the camera operator's hand had trembled in fear, but the details were clear enough. The victim's eyes were wide open, staring vacantly at the ceiling, their expression frozen in a mask of terror. Their body was contorted at an unnatural angle, their limbs twisted as if broken by an unseen force. A wave of nausea washed over Sarah as she watched the investigators react to the horrifying scene. Their initial shock quickly gave way to panic and despair. They frantically searched for an explanation, for a sign that this was all just a horrible nightmare. But the reality of the situation was undeniable. Something evil was stalking the halls of Hill House, and it was picking them off one by one. The friends felt a growing sense of unease, a creeping dread that seemed to emanate from the tape itself. They were no longer just passive viewers of a tragic story. They were becoming entangled in the horrors of Hill House, drawn into its web of fear and despair. The friends decided to stop watching the tape. The horror had become too real, too close for comfort. The line between the events on the screen and their own reality had blurred, leaving them with a lingering sense of dread and unease. They tried to distract themselves, but the images from the tape continued to haunt their thoughts. The whispers, the shadows, the terror in the investigators' eyes, it all played on a loop in their minds, refusing to be banished. They felt a strange pull towards the tape, a morbid fascination with the unfolding tragedy. It was as if the tape itself had a hold on them, drawing them back into its web of horror. Despite their fear, they knew they had to see it through to the end. They had to know the fate of the investigators, had to understand the true nature of the evil lurking within Hill House. So they gathered their courage and resumed watching the tape. The footage had become increasingly erratic, the images fragmented and distorted, as if the camera itself was succumbing to the growing darkness within the house. The surviving investigators were scattered, their faces etched with fear and desperation. They whispered to each other, their voices barely audible above the eerie creaking of the house and the haunting silence that seemed to amplify their terror. As the friends watched the unfolding tragedy, they noticed something strange happening. The room around them seemed to grow colder, the air thicker, as if the oppressive atmosphere of Hill House was seeping into their reality. The boundaries between the world on the screen and their own living room were blurring, creating a disorienting and terrifying experience. Sounds from the tape echoed in their ears long after the scene had changed, creating an auditory illusion that transported them into the heart of the haunted house. They could almost feel the cold, damp air of Hill House against their skin, smell the musty odor of decay and the metallic tang of blood. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that the shadows in their living room seemed to be mimicking the movements of the shadows on the screen. They stretched and contorted, dancing to a silent, sinister rhythm that sent shivers down her spine. She glanced at her friends, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of the television screen. Their eyes were wide with fear, their bodies tense, as if they too were experiencing the blurring of realities. They were no longer just watching the horrors of Hill House unfold, they were living them. The line between observer and participant had vanished, leaving them stranded in a terrifying world where the past and present had collided, where the ghosts of Hill House were no longer confined to the flickering images on the screen. The tape reached its climax. The remaining investigators trapped in the house's attic were surrounded by unseen forces. Their screams were cut short, their struggles silenced by an unseen hand. The camera fell to the floor, capturing a final, horrifying image. A shadowy figure, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent, standing over the fallen investigators. Then, darkness. The tape ended. The friends sat in stunned silence, the chilling final image seared into their minds. The room was cold, the air thick with an oppressive silence that seemed to hum with unseen energy. Then a whisper. It came from the television screen, a soft, chilling voice that seemed to slither into their reality. "You're next." The friends froze, their blood turning to ice. The voice lingered in the air, long after the screen had faded to black. It was a promise, a threat, a terrifying echo from the haunted halls of Hill House that reached out from the past to claim them as its next victims. The tape had ended, but the story was far from over. The haunting had begun.